What are the biggest mistakes men make when they're rolling up on a woman? So you said, they might surprise them in some way. They might be shut down their personal space by getting a bit too close.
Yeah, we think most of them are overcompensations for their nervousness.
Interesting.
It's scary to approach a girl. And so there's generally two things that happen. One is the men hesitate too long, and then they get weird and stilted. Like they start to think about, well, what should I say? I need a good opener. Like, okay, that line sucks. And oh, geez. Yeah. Oh, she's talking to somebody now. It's not a good moment. They get too in their head, which generally means they don't approach. But if they do, they're generally so like out of the moment and in their minds that their vibe is just off, and women reject the vibe because they don't come off open and confident.
How do I get the vibe?
You start to listen. It's like sales, man. The same approach isn't going to work with everyone who walks in your dealership. Some guys, they're going to need the real soft touch, and you need to keep a real big distance and not interfere with their own process because they're going to sell themselves on the car. Other people need a lot of hand-holding and a lot of guidance. And it's not obvious which customers are which when they first walk in the door.
Yeah.
You have to make some tentative bids and learn to listen to their response and be flexibly adaptive until you find where they're kind of starting to open up. Guy walks into a car dealership, says, hey, can I help you with anything? He's like, I don't know, I'm just looking around. That was not the right thing. He didn't even make eye contact. He's just like, fucking leave me alone. But if you were to say something like, I personally like it in blue, like that's kind of a surprising thing. And you might turn around, it's like, that's not what I expected you to say. I expected you to kind of give me the hard sell. And that created an opportunity for curiosity, which may have led to a moment of connection, which could potentially lead in the direction of an interaction, which can lead to a sale. Like it's very difficult to get a sale without the interaction. So you have to put out tentative bids and learn to listen to how people respond.
Okay, so the person selling the car would say, I personally like it in blue.
Potentially.
Okay, just as a way to...
I don't know, that just came into my mind. I
like it. It's quite, but it evokes curiosity because then I might respond, I only wear black, so I need something in black. But then at least you have a bridge.
One of the best pickup lines that I used when I was getting over my approach anxiety in San Francisco is I'd go up and say, hi, hey, how you doing? What brings you out here tonight? And I'd say, I'm actually trying to get over my approach anxiety. How am I doing? And that led to like, what do you mean approach anxiety? Well, I don't know if you know this, but it's gonna be really difficult for guys to approach women. Really? I had no idea. Yeah, it's a problem I help guys with that all the time. I figured I should probably get good at it myself. Well, what do you mean? What do you do? I kind of help people. It's interesting. And it's also vulnerable in a good way because it's revealing of my present moment experience. Vulnerability is such a tricky word because it has a lot of negative associations with it.
Performative vulnerability.
Well, it's also, vulnerable means wound. It's like where I could be hurt. It's woundability. Like, why would I tell you where my Achilles heel is? I don't know if you're going to be able to use that information well. How do I know you're not going to weaponize that further down the road, right? But one more useful definition of vulnerability is that I am sharing with you my present moment emotional experience, whatever that is. And that makes it easier for women to see you. When you start to share and disclose some of your present moment emotional experience, it's like using the right words for a man. It unlocks their understanding and they can kind of like see you more clearly because you're putting something out there that they can potentially resonate with. Mm-hmm. They might not, and that's okay. You can just find someone else to play with, right? But in the absence of that, it's very difficult for a guy to get anything to happen. And most guys, they tone down that emotion. They can be very robotic. They can be very monotone. Hey, how you doing? So one way is guys screw this up because they get too in their head and that makes them stilted and weird. The other way is they try to overcome their nervousness by overcompensating. Mm-hmm. They get really drunk. They get super bold and handsy because they're trying to be kind of dominant. And I suppose that can work, but it generally rubs women the wrong way.
One of the things I've never forgotten from when I was 18 years old and I was reading those books about seduction and pickup artistry is it talks about how to deal with a 10. A 10 out of 10.
What'd they say?
Well, it basically says you kind of need to be a bit of an arsehole. Not an arsehole in the sense of being rude or whatever, but you kind of need to. So say if you were a 10 and we're at dinner, I didn't know who you were, but there was a group of very attractive women here, and you were the one that I wanted, and you were the 10.
I wouldn't talk to you, right?
You wouldn't talk to me, but the strategy, it says, is to basically pay attention to everybody else. And then when the 10 tries to talk to you, go 1 second, and then just keep talking to everybody else. And it's that small communication that I high value, that kind of would evoke their interest and curiosity. Why does this man not maybe pander to me like all other men have always done? What is it about him that he's got such confidence that he will give me a slight neg? You know,
9s and 10s are not a different species than the 5s and 6s. And what are the women who tend to really be interested in most guys? The ones who are pursuing, the ones who stick around, who want those long-term relationships. For better or for worse, they're often the ones that the men kind of have this take it or leave it attitude towards. And they're not going out of their way, which can seem like they're very confident, they're very composed, they're self-possessed. There might be something special or attractive about this guy because he's not pursuing me. I'm pursuing him, which can reduce cognitive dissonance in the direction of increasing attraction, because think about it. I don't usually go out of my way for people, and yet I'm going out of my way for this man. Why am I doing that? It must be because I really like this guy, right? Sometimes our emotions only arise out of our behavior. People sometimes think we have an emotion, then we act. Sometimes we act and then we have an emotion, right? So getting people, it's like it's not possible to get others to like you more by liking them more. That's one of the biggest errors in dating. And one of the best little strategies to increase interest is to ask other people to do things for you, because it takes advantage of this little cognitive hack that I just described. Stephen, you don't go out of your way doing favors for people. If I asked you a small but reasonable favor and you executed it, then consciously or not, you're going to think, wow, I don't usually do favors. I did a favor for Orion. He might be a pretty decent dude. Like, maybe there's something to this guy. Because
give me an example. So if I say, could you grab that for me 1 second? And I point at
that's
something.
one of the easiest ways to do it. Sometimes it's just, I've seen it in pickup where you can just say, you're talking to somebody and be like, it's a little loud. Let's just step like 2 steps to the side. Just that 2 steps and complying with that reasonable request, it elevates unconscious attraction. It also is an opportunity to create what you might call a yes chain, which is related to foot in the door, which is you're more likely to comply with a larger request if I first get you to consent to a number of smaller reasonable requests first. It's not the only way, but it's one way to potentially undermine resistance.
And what if I'm a woman? Because a lot of women are struggling with the way that the world has changed and this sort of move towards dating apps and online dating. And they don't have it's not socially acceptable typically for a woman, or it's not socially typical for a woman to roll up to a guy in a supermarket or wherever else and start to proposition him. It's typically thought that—
And they're generally bad at it, I just have to say. Like, I've had some women approach me and they're not good. Maybe most guys aren't good at picking women up either, but some guys do get good at it. They make it like their job to learn how to seduce or pick up women, at least for a few months. But most women, when they've approached me, they have very poor game.
What should a woman be thinking about when she approaches a man?
It's probably best for women to not roll up on men the way that men often roll up on women. I did a series about this, which is reminding women that for the vast majority of our history, women have been the initiators. They've just initiated indirectly with plausible deniability. So the most stereotypical example, maybe you'll appreciate this given your culture, is the dropping of the handkerchief of the Victorian lady as she's walking in the park. And she sees in the corner of her eye an attractive man that she might want to initiate a conversation with. And as she's passing by his bench, without noticing, the handkerchief falls out of her pocket, which creates an opportunity for the man to notice it, pick it up and say, "Excuse me, miss, but I believe you dropped this." "Oh my, how absolutely clumsy of me. My goodness." And suddenly, boom, she's in a conversation with a man that she chose to have a conversation with. And if for whatever reason the guy turns out to be a total dolt, she could just say, "Oh, thank you for this, but I'm late for tea." And she can just kind of scamper off because she has the plausible deniability that she didn't do this on purpose.
So women do it with their eyes and stuff.
That's what I say. It's like the come hither stare. And I did it really badly in that episode, but I was trying to demonstrate what that might look like. Eye contact is extremely intimate. One of the things I say in that episode that I don't think many women know is that if you and I didn't know each other and we were out at a bar and I just like looked right into your eyes for 3 seconds.
I think you wanted to fight.
Exactly. Even there's this nervous laughter, which can potentially cover, okay, this is getting a little tense. And maybe I'm trying to de-escalate it by smiling and showing that I'm not a threat. But absolutely, sustained eye contact between two strange men is an aggressive tactic. For more than a couple seconds, it's gonna be like, can I help you? Is there a problem here? He just looked at you, you know? And why? Because it's too intimate. I don't know who you are, dude. Why do you think that you can get that close to me? You could be on the other side of the bar, but eye contact, it feels like you're inside me. It's amazing. So women can use eye contact to their benefit, where they can basically call the men that they want to interact with to them, but they have to be willing to do that. If they're not willing to drop the handkerchief or look them in the eye, I mean, that's sort of like the minimum necessary behavior.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.